we now begin part two, Tim, where we talk about culture and optimization. You know, in part one, I think you've done a really nice job in setting the scene for what you kindly describe as a tough go life, right?
Yeah.
And for many valid reasons, I think, and a lot of lessons learned out of that. But some of the key things that you spoke about there were culture, training, preparedness of the business, understanding of the business process flows, that sort of thing. So maybe in this section of our time, could you just talk more about, I guess, the culture process, you know, historically, what you and your team had to do to really improve that, to help everybody understand, you know, that they're part of this to making this successful. And then, you know, once you've gone through that, you know, we could perhaps get into some of the many optimization initiatives that you were able to implement. But I think what's also important to highlight to a lot of the listeners out there is, I think you're only really able to do that once you were stable, right? Because I think a lot of people think that, you know, once you implement the WMS and okay, great, we're going to get all of these amazing benefits, which you will, but it's a bit of a journey, right?
So, Mike, as we were saying earlier in the segment or in the last platform, was the fact that the culture was such an eye opener for me. It was, you know, it's a big environment. I think I'd mentioned that last time. It's 26,000 square meter facility. At that point we had 200 staff members, of which I didn't know anything about any of them individually. But I feel like I'm a personable type of person, so I tried to make sure that I got into the environment quite quickly and started to just try and understand some sort of hierarchy, trying to understand something about the people that were in these different positions, as well as, you know, trying to understand some of those problems that we spoke about last time was, you know, with the serial tracking and with the consolidation, and just seeing how different people reacted and acted in those environments was quite an interesting one. I think just added on top of that culture was the fact that we were working 7 days a week. And it became about a 3-month process of us working 7 days a week, sometimes 14 to 16 hours. We presented to the directors at 7 a.m. every morning and at 5 p.m. every night, talking about what our plan was for the day and what we had achieved for the day. And so the culture was one where, interestingly, for me, was the tech industry. You get a lot of longevity and a lot of dedication from your staff. So a lot of these guys had been in the tech industry, not only Tarsus, but in previous technology companies prior to Tarsus. And some of these guys had actually lost jobs through system implementations. And so that kind of, there was almost like a deja vu starting to happen. You could see it in the guys, and some of them were extremely nervous. And again, was also then that feeling of not quite knowing what to do, was those other people who had come into work on the Monday and now suddenly had a different job title and a role to play. And you could see them consistently trying to pull back into those old roles. And so even some of the discussions we had when we started to talk about different solutions to maybe solve some of the issues we were having, was actually then starting to have to play into those old roles terminologies, if you will. So I'll put an example to that now.
I was going to say, if you had a couple of examples, that'd be really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So as an example, it's one of the optimization streams that we did, but I think it's absolutely critical to talk to is the fact that in the old days, or prior to the go live on Manhattan scale, was that you had a job title called an aisle champion, which meant that people were employed full-time in an aisle of the warehouse, and they knew everything about that aisle. They knew that there was HP or Dell or Lenovo stock, where it was, et cetera, et cetera. And so they would be the person who controlled everything that happened in there. If somebody required a product from there, they would be the ones that could summon a forklift driver, an MHE driver, get that product down. They would put it away again. And so there was this thing of saying, if we just had those people. And so one of the observations I'd had at the time was, and, you know, I kept pushing against it, saying that, you know, the old days are gone. And then I quickly realized that was actually just depressing people. So I looked, and we were running 17 MHEs at that time, very haphazard. They were running between the receiving bays and multiple locations and passages within the warehouse. And for me, that struck me as like a total waste. The other thing that we started to see was a lot of damage on the infrastructure, on the racking, etc., as well as the misplacement of products, and that was contributing to that inaccuracy of the inventory. So we took all of those things that I've just stated, and we said, okay, how do we change this? How do we start to make people more accountable? And then what we had to do is we had to play back into that old culture of saying, okay, well, let's take that aisle champion, but let's make sure but let's use the MHEs to create those aisle champions. And you could see the lights starting to come on. So it was then starting to just kind of put words in their mouth to allow them to tell you your idea as if it was their own. And that was a major game changer for us. That reduced our MHEs from 17 to 9 at that time, which was a massive saving. I think
that's a lot, right?
Yeah, the saving in the first year would have been about 1.5 million, 1.6 million rand.
Just in material handling equipment.
Yes, just in MHEs, yeah. Mm-hmm. But what we found as well is that so just to also lay it on top of this culture of worry and uncertainty, is we also had a lot of outsourced staff, and what it meant is when we went onto Manhattan scale, is you obviously had licensed users. You had people using RF guns, whereas prior to that, people were just manually kind of operational within the facility. And what it showed immediately to a new person, definitely, that we had excess people. And sadly, those that were on outsourced contract agreements, those ones were they were the low-hanging fruit, if you will, and I mean that with respect. So those people we had to let go. And that was, we reduced by about 30 people on the first pass. So that was probably about a 15% reduction in staff almost immediately. And that added to the anxiety, unfortunately, of some of the staff too, because when they started seeing that happen, it really added to it. But I think one of the benefits and one of the metrics that we were able to use from scale was the performance indicators. So we were able to especially look at pickers as an example and say, who's performing, who's not. And we use funny little analogies. Just, football's a major, it's a major talking point and a major sport for us in South Africa and definitely in this warehouse. And so we were able to use football analogies to say, we're on Tuesday. We didn't perform as well as we should have yesterday. We're losing 1-0. We need to score today and make sure that we finish this day, hopefully at 1-1. And we'll move on from there. And that was our analogy all the time. And they would say to me, "What's the score?" And I would say to them, "We're losing 2-1." And that's how we walked around every day. And we just walked the floors. That was so important, was just walking the floor daily. I think I did 26,000 steps a day in the warehouse in the beginning. And it's just being part of the team.
That's an important one, right, Tim? It's that feedback and that measurement, that ongoing measurement to the staff. I mean, sure, they could see that through dashboards in the warehouse and all those sort of things, right, which we had in place. But that I guess that management engagement, that guys, I'm in this with you kind of process. It's really cool. Yeah.
It is a really important factor. So for them to see management as the first people in and the last people out every day, also forfeiting lunch breaks, also making sure that you're in there doing it, and they really enjoyed it when you actually went and got involved in their actions as well. So if they were a picker, you went and actually understood the picking motion with them. You competed with them. That was a fun one. We used to do the Blood, Sweat and Tears award as well. So from a previous marathon that I'd done, we had been given some race packs and they had deodorants in. So every day the person who had performed the best got the stick of deodorant because they had worked so hard, and the person at the bottom, I gave them an apple daily because they clearly needed the energy to to pick up their performance. But that became a fun thing, and even guys from that. You know, one of the first guys I ever gave an apple to, this always stands out for me, became a consistent performer after that. It was amazing just seeing how he changed, because it wasn't an abusive thing, it was a team thing, and the team could see it, and he was kind of shown up in front of his team, and he didn't quite like that, but not in a nasty way. It was in a really kind, encouraging way. So we seem to get that right, and I think that the team bought into it. But I think that the main thing was understanding them, understanding their nuances, working with them, and allowing them almost to tell you how the solutions were going to play, even though they were your ideas.
Yeah. So if we were to fast forward culture today, I mean, surely there's a massive sort of a change from then and now. Could you sort of fast forward and just describe what a typical day looks like for these guys versus what it looked like 4.5 years ago? You know, and how they respond and how they work together and so forth. And then maybe that'd be a great way just to close out the conversation on culture.
Yeah. So just trying to remember how they used to respond. So there was a lot of running and hiding. I'm sure that would ring true for a lot of people, is when someone doesn't know what to do, they'd rather just stay out of the way. And so people would go missing a lot of the time. You would give people tasks to fulfill, and they wouldn't do them, and they would just never come back to you because they actually didn't know what to do, and they would almost feel too embarrassed to come and tell you. One of the exciting things for me was that you suddenly had this other layer of people that were coming to the fore. So there was the old supervisory and team leader layer, and that example I gave of the zoning and the forklifts. One of the most amazing experiences for me as well was walking through just after we had reduced the warehouse down to 9 zones and reduced the MHEs from 17 to 9. I was walking through, and one of the young guys who was kind of showing himself to be like a really powerful leader and someone for the future. And he said to me, can I show you something? I said, please. So he said, I was just analyzing the data, and I figured that we could actually reduce from 9 zones down to 8. I was so taken aback. You analyzed what? And he said he was analyzing the data, and he showed me a comparison to say this zone and this zone are executing the same amount of work as 2 zones as the other guys are doing in their individual zones. So so that was an amazing one for me. So we suddenly had the shift of people starting to volunteer information to us. And fast forward to where we are today, we'll talk about it later, but we implemented a 3PL solution. And one of the first Black Friday that we did for these people, they had doubled the volume, my customer, and we were able to execute that stuff so quickly. I mean, the guys handle these spikes for Black Fridays. You can suddenly go from 4,000 orders in a day to 10,000 without a hitch, and it almost feels like just seamless. And people bring issues to the table, whereas previously they wouldn't bring those issues. I think I mentioned it previously, was the fact that if something was wrong in the system, they wouldn't come and tell you that. They would just simply put that pallet down, or just simply skip past a pick, or etc. They would just kind of move past it and hope that they weren't going to be found out. Whereas now people come and volunteer that information. They come and say the system's doing this, or this product is damaged, or this product isn't available as it should be. So yeah, just a different vibe. People know exactly what they're doing, and there's been a lot of a natural attrition in this place as well now. So I'd say we probably at about 60% of the staff that we were when we started.
Okay. Now that's a really amazing, I think, overview of the culture process that you went through. And I think, for people watching this, it's something to think a lot about during the course of an implementation of a WMS and really any other system. But it is so critical to get right. So thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Mark.